Rachel, a single mother with calloused hands from years of waitressing, froze when she heard it, a muffled cry coming from beneath the forest floor. As she brushed away leaves and soil, she uncovered fingers clawing at the earth. The man she pulled from that shallow grave was barely conscious, but his whispered words would change both their lives forever. They thought I was already dead. Please help me. Her daughter Arya clutched her arm, eyes wide with terror at the sight of the dirt-covered stranger gasping for air. Rachel's heart pounded against her ribs as she stared at the man who had minutes ago been buried beneath their hiking trail. Despite her exhaustion from working double shifts, adrenaline surged through her body as she faced a decision that would alter the course of her ordinary life forever. Rachel guided her 10-year-old daughter Arya along the forest trail, her body protesting with each step. The double shift at Manny's diner had left her exhausted, muscles crying out for rest. That morning as she downed her third cup of coffee, she'd nearly called off their hike. But promises mattered to Rachel, especially those made to her daughter. "Mom, did you hear that?" Arya stopped suddenly, her small hand tugging at Rachel's worn jacket. Rachel paused, pushing a strand of brown hair behind her ear. "Hear what, honey?" The forest seemed quiet except for birds and the occasional rustle of leaves in the October breeze. "That sound." Arya pointed toward a patch of disturbed earth several feet from the trail. "Like someone crying." Rachel was about to dismiss it when she heard it too, a muffled groan that didn't belong among the natural sounds of the forest. Her heart quickened. "Stay on the path, Arya." She took a tentative step toward the sound, scanning the area for potential danger. The noise came again, weaker this time. Rachel knelt beside what looked like recently disturbed soil. Years of hardship had taught her caution, but something about this situation pulled at her. A mother's instinct perhaps, the same one that had guided her through Arya's fevers and her own sleepless nights. "Should we call someone?" Arya asked, her voice small against the vastness of the trees. Rachel hesitated. Her phone showed no service bars. "Just stay there, sweetie." She began clearing away pine needles and loose dirt with her hands, not entirely sure what she expected to find. Then she saw it, fingers, human fingers pushing weakly through the soil. Rachel gasped, nearly falling backward. For one frozen moment she considered grabbing Arya and running. Instead she called out, "I'm here. I'll help you." She dug frantically, her nails breaking as she clawed at the earth. The fingers moved slightly, confirming someone was alive beneath. Rachel's mind raced with questions, but she pushed them aside. There would be time for answers later. "Arya, bring me the water bottle from my backpack," she called, not looking up from her task. When no response came, she glanced back to see her daughter hiding behind a tree, eyes wide with fear. "It's okay, honey. Someone needs our help." As Rachel uncovered more of the buried person, a face emerged. A man's face, dirt-caked and pale, his lips cracked from dehydration. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with terror. From behind her, Rachel heard Arya's quiet sob, the sound cutting through the forest silence and underscoring the horror of what they'd found. "You're going to be okay," Rachel said, though she wasn't certain it was true. She'd cleared enough soil to reveal his shoulders now. His expensive shirt was torn and soiled. "Can you tell me your name?" His eyes flickered to the woods as if searching for someone, then back to Rachel's face. He tried to speak but coughed instead, a dry, painful sound. Rachel retrieved her water bottle and held it to his lips, allowing him small sips. Years of caring for her sick mother had taught her the danger of too much water too quickly. "Daniel," he finally whispered, his voice like sandpaper. "My name is Daniel." Rachel worked methodically, clearing more dirt until she could see his chest rising and falling with labored breaths. "Daniel, I'm Rachel. My daughter and I are going to help you." His eyes focused on her face with sudden clarity. "They did this for Clemens, for the company." His words came between gasps. "They thought I was dead." A chill ran through Rachel that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "Don't try to talk now. We need to get you out of here first." It took nearly 40 minutes to free Daniel completely. He was tall and despite his weakened state, Rachel struggled to support his weight. Arya finally approached, handing Rachel a sturdy branch that served as a makeshift walking stick. The journey back to Rachel's old sedan was slow and painful. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally murmuring names and numbers that meant nothing to Rachel. By the time they reached her car, Rachel's shirt was soaked with sweat, and Arya's face was streaked with tears. "Are we taking him to the hospital?" Arya asked as Rachel helped Daniel into the back seat. Daniel's hand shot out, gripping Rachel's wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals," he pleaded, his eyes suddenly alert. "They'll find me. Please." Rachel looked at this stranger, this man who had been buried alive, and made a decision that would alter the course of her life. "Okay," she said, "but you'll need to tell me everything." As she started the car, Rachel caught Arya's worried expression in the rearview mirror. The 15-minute drive to their small house on the edge of town stretched before them, filled with unanswered questions and a growing sense that their lives would never be the same. The sedan pulled into the driveway of Rachel's modest home as the evening shadows grew long. Daniel's breathing had steadied during the drive, but his face remained pale beneath the dirt and scratches. Rachel pushed open the garage door with her shoulder, one arm supporting Daniel and the other fumbling for the light switch. The single bulb cast long shadows across her workshop, illuminating the space where she escaped after Arya went to bed, a sanctuary where she created small wooden crafts that momentarily let her forget about overdue bills and endless shifts. "Mom, should I get some blankets?" Arya stood in the doorway, her small frame silhouetted against the light from the kitchen. "Yes, and grab the first aid kit from under the bathroom sink." Rachel guided Daniel to the worn couch she'd salvaged from a neighbor's curb last spring. It wasn't much, but it was clean and better than the floor. As she helped him sit, she noticed how his expensive watch contrasted with his dirt-stained clothes. Even in his weakened state, there was something about him that spoke of a different world than hers. "Are you sure about this?" Arya whispered when she returned with the blankets, her eyes wide with concern. "What if he's dangerous? What if he's a criminal?" Rachel tucked a blanket around Daniel's shivering form. "He needs help, Arya. Sometimes that's all you need to know about a person." But her daughter's words echoed her own doubts. She knew nothing about this man except that someone had tried to kill him. Was she putting Arya at risk by bringing him here? She cleaned the dirt from Daniel's face and hands with a warm washcloth, movements practiced from years of tending to her mother during her long illness. The memory returned in flashes, changing sheets, administering medication, holding a straw to parched lips. Those difficult years had taught her more than any first aid class could. "He needs water and something to eat," Rachel told Arya. "Maybe some of that soup from yesterday." As Arya retreated to the kitchen, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. "Where?" His voice was a rasp. "My garage. You're safe." Rachel checked his pulse, rapid but steady. "I should take you to a hospital." "No." His hand gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "They'll find me there." Rachel frowned. "Who will find you?" "The people who did this." Daniel nodded weakly. "They thought I was already dead," he whispered, the words sending a chill down Rachel's spine before he slipped back into unconsciousness. Throughout the evening he drifted between awareness and fevered sleep. In his delirium he muttered names and numbers. Westridge Technologies offshore accounts, Blake, Charlotte, betrayal. Rachel wrote them down in a notebook she usually used for budgeting. The next morning, after sending Arya to school with promises that everything would be okay, Rachel risked their overdue electric bill money on antibiotics and medical supplies. The garage slowly transformed over the next few days. Her workbench became a makeshift bedside table. The shelves that once held her craft supplies now stored medicine and food. This room that had once been her escape from responsibility now held her firmly in its grip. By the third day, Daniel was lucid enough to sit up and talk. His fever had broken and with it came clarity. "I should call the police," Rachel said, sitting across from him on an old stool. "Someone tried to kill you. That's a crime." Daniel shook his head, eyes haunted. "The police won't help. The people who did this, they have influence, money. My business partner Blake and my ex-wife Charlotte, they worked together. They wanted my company, my patents, everything I built." "So they buried you alive?" Rachel couldn't keep the horror from her voice. "They thought I was already dead." Daniel's hands trembled as he accepted the mug of tea Rachel offered. "Blake poisoned me at a business dinner. When I passed out, they took me to the forest. They buried me, not realizing the poison hadn't finished its job. I woke up underground." Rachel felt a chill despite the garage's warmth. "The one you trusted most buried you alive," she murmured, echoing words he'd spoken in his fever. Something passed between them then. A recognition. Rachel thought of her ex-husband who'd walked out when Arya was barely 2, claiming he wasn't ready for this life. Different circumstances, similar abandonment. "You understand loss," Daniel said softly. It wasn't a question. Different kind. Same emptiness. Rachel looked at her hands, calloused from work and worry. "So what happens now?" As the days passed, Daniel grew stronger. Rachel found herself drawn to his story, to the quiet determination that emerged as his strength returned. By the end of the week, he was able to sit at her kitchen table, the morning light illuminating how far he'd come from that shallow grave. "I need to know what happened," Daniel said, his voice stronger now as he pushed away the empty breakfast plate. Rachel noticed how his hands no longer trembled when he reached for his coffee. "I was a CO," he began, voice steadier than it had been. "Healthcare innovations. We created rural clinics and affordable medical devices for developing countries." He paused, took a breath. "I thought we were doing something good, something real." Rachel nodded, listening intently. Her heart ached at how completely his world had been stolen from him, the depth of betrayal etched in the lines around his eyes. "The company grew faster than I expected. My friend Blake, we'd been roommates in college, joined as CFO. And then there was Charlotte." His voice caught on the name. "We married after a year. Had a daughter, Olivia." "How old is she?" Rachel asked softly. 8. Daniel's expression softened. "Smart. Loves bugs and space. Asks questions about everything." His hands rested on the table. "She has this laugh that makes everyone around her smile. Even on my worst days, hearing Olivia laugh could fix everything." Rachel felt a tear trace down her cheek before she could stop it. She quickly wiped it away, but not before Daniel noticed. It was the same way she spoke about Arya. That mixture of pride and fierce protection that only parents truly understood. "When did you realize something was wrong?" she asked. Daniel's face darkened. "Small things at first. Meetings I wasn't invited to. Documents requiring signatures I didn't remember giving. Charlotte traveling more often." His breathing quickened, and Rachel recognized the beginning of the panic attacks she'd witnessed before. "Take a moment," she said, sliding a glass of water toward him. When he continued, his voice was hollow. "They had been planning this for months. Charlotte wanted full control of the estate. Blake wanted the company." His words tumbled out faster now. "They had already diverted millions into offshore accounts, faked contracts, forged signatures, all under my nose." Rachel watched him carefully, noting the specific details that painted a picture of elaborate deception. "I confronted Blake at dinner. He must have slipped something into my drink. I remember feeling dizzy, then nothing until I woke up in the ground." Daniel's hands shook violently now. "I could feel the dirt on my face, in my mouth. I couldn't move my arms. I thought I was already dead." Rachel reached across the table, almost touching his hand before pulling back. "But you survived. You fought." "Barely. Daniels Eichmethurch. And now I need to fight again." That afternoon he asked to use her laptop. Rachel hesitated. The ancient computer contained her banking information, Arya's school documents, the scraps of the life she'd built. But something in Daniel's determination convinced her. She watched as his fingers flew across the keyboard, his technical knowledge emerging like a second language. Even in his weakened state, his mind worked with precision. Rachel saw flashes of spreadsheets, financial documents, email exchanges. "They staged everything," Daniel muttered, scrolling through news articles. "A retreat, a sabbatical. Verena told the press I needed time, that I'd gone off-grid to write a memoir. Everyone believed her. Why wouldn't they?" Rachel leaned closer, seeing a photograph of a striking woman with sharp eyes beside a man with an easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's them." Daniel nodded. "Charlotte and Blake." He clicked another tab, revealing legal documents. "They've already filed to have me declared dead. Expedited the process somehow." "Is that even possible?" Rachel asked. "With enough money and connections?" "Yes." Daniel pointed to a signature at the bottom of a document. "They forged my hand," he said grimly. Digitally replicated it. Probably from my legal documents. Rachel saw what this meant before he said it. They think you're dead. Which means they won't be looking for me. A strange light entered Daniel's eyes. We have an advantage. Rachel raised an eyebrow. We. Daniel met her gaze. I have nothing to offer you except trouble. But I need help, and you're the only person in the world who knows I'm alive. Rachel thought of Arya, of the rent due next week, of the precarious balance of her everyday existence. Then she thought of the man she'd pulled from the earth, fighting for breath, fighting for his life. Tell me what you need, she said finally. The next morning, Rachel donned her waitress uniform, her mind racing with everything Daniel had shared. As she grabbed her keys, she realized that her routine job at Manny's diner might be their first opportunity to gather information without raising suspicions. Rachel's first day at the downtown location of Manny's diner brought a different crowd than she was used to, executives in tailored suits, their voices hushed over business proposals and coffee. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, the familiar weight of plates balanced along her arm, a stark contrast to the unfamiliar territory she now navigated. When Blake Clemens walked in, Daniel's former business partner, Rachel's heart raced. She kept her eyes downcast as she approached his table. More coffee, sir? She asked, voice carefully neutral. He barely glanced up from his phone, nodding absently as she refilled his cup. She caught glimpses of his screen, emails about quarterly projections and mentions of a charity gala. Every detail mattered now. Back at home, Daniel had created a makeshift investigation center in Rachel's living room. Despite working with limited resources, her outdated laptop and a prepaid phone, his technical expertise was evident in the secure system he'd built for documenting evidence. Arya watched them work one evening, her homework spread across the kitchen table. With the straightforward logic only children possess, she looked up at Daniel and asked, "If they took your company, why can't you just tell everyone you're still alive?" Daniel paused, startled by the simplicity of her question. "They've made it complicated," he explained, setting down his pen. "They told people I'm missing, but they're working to have me declared legally dead." "But you're not dead," Arya pointed out. "You're right here eating Mom's spaghetti." Something shifted in Daniel's expression, a spark of realization. That night he accessed public records and discovered what they feared. A death certificate had already been filed, listing the cause as accidental drowning during a private retreat. 12 of my private accounts have been emptied, Daniel said, scrolling through financial records he'd managed to access. All funds routed through offshore holdings in the Caymans, Gibraltar, and Dubai. His voice cracked slightly. They've been planning this for years. Rachel sat beside him, close enough to offer support without crossing the invisible boundary between them. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. Their evidence collection intensified. Rachel began carrying the burner phone during her shifts, strategically placing it near Blake's regular table. When she first played back one of the recordings, her hand flew to her mouth. Charlotte's voice came through clearly. "The board doesn't suspect anything. As far as they're concerned, Daniel's sabbatical is just that, a break. They'll never connect us to his disappearance." Each piece revealed a deeper level of corruption, painting a picture of methodical destruction. Falsified documents, manipulated board meeting minutes, and financial trails all pointed to the same conclusion. Daniel had been systematically betrayed by those closest to him. "What about Olivia?" Rachel asked one evening, noticing how Daniel paused whenever his daughter's photograph appeared on social media accounts he monitored. "Charlotte has primary custody. The court granted it after our divorce." His voice tightened. "She's told Olivia I abandoned them." Rachel understood the particular pain of parental alienation. Her ex-husband had tried similar tactics before disappearing from their lives completely. "We'll find a way for you to see her again." The charity gala appeared in local news reports, billed as Westridge Technologies' commitment to community health. Both Blake and Charlotte would attend, showcasing their philanthropic efforts, funded by the company they'd stolen. "That's where we'll do it," Daniel said, circling the date on their makeshift calendar. "Everyone who matters will be there. Rachel nodded, though concern tightened her chest. Are you ready for that? To face them? Daniel met her eyes, something new in his expression. Not just determination but a calm certainty. I wasn't ready to be buried alive either. But I survived. As the date approached, their preparations grew more intense. Daniel began exercising daily, rebuilding the strength that months of recovery had stolen. Rachel found herself practicing what to say, how to move through a world of wealth and privilege that had never been hers. They were no longer just allies united by circumstance. In the quiet moments between evidence gathering and planning, something deeper had taken root between them. The night before the gala, Rachel watched Daniel standing at the window, his silhouette outlined against the streetlight. Tomorrow would change everything. For both of them. Rachel watched Daniel as he stood before the mirror in her bedroom, adjusting his tie with careful precision. The man she'd pulled from the earth 3 months ago had transformed. His hollow cheeks filled out, his eyes clear and focused, his posture straight with renewed purpose. How does it feel? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. Wearing a suit again? Daniel met her eyes in the mirror. Like putting on armor. His fingers trembled slightly as he straightened his collar. Tonight would be the first time he'd face the people who had tried to kill him. The charity gala invitation sat on Rachel's dresser, its elegant cream stationery a stark contrast to the worn furniture. Blake and Verena had unwittingly provided their own undoing. A public event celebrating the foundation they'd created using Daniel's stolen fortune. The security team will check IDs at the entrance, Daniel said, reviewing their plan. We can't risk your name being flagged if they're monitoring guest lists. Rachel nodded, touching the server's uniform hanging on her closet door. After weeks of careful planning, she'd secured a position with the catering company hired for the event. I'll be invisible. Just another person refilling champagne glasses. They arrived separately at the hotel. Rachel entered through the service entrance, joining the bustling kitchen staff. Through the kitchen doors she caught glimpses of the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, floral arrangements, a string quartet playing in the corner. This was Daniel's world, not hers. A world where people spent on one night what she earned in months. As she moved through the crowd with a tray of champagne flutes, Rachel spotted Verena, tall, elegant in a deep blue gown, her perfectly styled hair framing a face that smiled without warmth. Beside her stood Blake, handsome in that polished way that had always seemed suspicious to Rachel. Together they greeted guests, accepting congratulations for their philanthropy. The Westridge Foundation represents our commitment to giving back, Verena was saying to an elderly couple. Daniel would have wanted his legacy to continue this way. Rachel's hand tightened around her tray. The casual mention of Daniel as if his death had been a tragedy rather than their crime, made her stomach turn. She caught Blake checking his watch, then whispering something to Verena. They both glanced toward the entrance. At exactly 8 o'clock, while Blake prepared to give his keynote address, the ballroom doors opened. Daniel stood there, backlit by the hallway lights. For a moment, the room continued its gentle hum of conversation. Then, like a wave, silence spread from the entrance inward as guests noticed the newcomer. Verena saw him first. The champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. That's impossible, she whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Blake turned, his practiced smile freezing in place. Security, he called, recovering quickly. We have an intruder. 2 security guards moved toward Daniel but stopped when he raised his hand. Blake Clemens and Verena Westridge, Daniel's voice carried across the suddenly silent room, attempted to murder me 3 months ago. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped. Rachel moved closer to the stage, watching Verena's face drain of color. They poisoned me, buried me alive, and stole everything I built. Daniel walked forward, steady and deliberate. And they've been using my money to fund this foundation, to rewrite my legacy while I was presumed dead. Blake attempted damage control. This man is clearly disturbed. He resembles Daniel, yes, but Daniel Westridge died in a tragic accident. Did I? Daniel asked, pulling out his phone and connecting it to the presentation system. Documents appeared on the screen behind Blake. Financial records, falsified death certificates, offshore accounts. The authorities already have all of this evidence. They're just waiting for my signal. Just as Blake's face went white, headlights gleamed through the ballroom windows. As if on cue, police officers entered the ballroom. Blake lunged for an exit only to find his path blocked. Verena remained frozen, her perfect composure shattered. But Daniel wasn't looking at either of them anymore. His eyes had found Olivia standing near a table of desserts, her small face a mixture of confusion and dawning recognition. "Daddy." The word hung in the air, fragile and hopeful. Daniel knelt down as Olivia ran to him, her party dress fluttering behind her. He felt something like forgiveness bloom inside him as his arms wrapped around his daughter. The room faded away. Rachel watched as he whispered something in Olivia's ear, tears streaming down both their faces. In the background, officers led Blake and Verena away in handcuffs. Guests whispered and pointed. But at the center of the chaos, a father held his daughter, both of them finding in each other something they thought had been lost forever. Rachel stood among the scattered champagne glasses and stunned guests, witnessing a reunion that transcended the justice being served around them. In that moment she realized that the journey that had begun with a desperate cry from beneath the forest floor had led to something neither of them could have imagined. A chance to build something new from the ruins of what was lost. As the seasons changed, the farmhouse became a sanctuary of healing. Daniel watched from the kitchen window as Rachel showed both girls how to tend the garden they'd planted together, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze. The Fallenstein Reborn Foundation, which Daniel had established with his restored fortune, now helped others who had been betrayed and broken find their way back to wholeness. It was his way of transforming pain into purpose. Rachel caught his eye through the window and smiled, the same smile that had given him hope when he had none. Their family, created through extraordinary circumstances, reminded him daily that compassion could rebuild what betrayal destroyed. Remember, sometimes a single act of kindness can plant seeds that change lives. If this story touched your heart, like and subscribe for more tales of compassion in action.